Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Emeka. I want to discuss the symptoms of very weak, um, very weak and dominating economies. Um, you know, every economic indicator, every economic variable, every economic parameter builds and points to the direction of any economy at any particular intervening period in time. By the special grace of God, if you look at these parameters, they are as clear as the sun in the day and the moon in the night. It's not something you manipulate. It's like when somebody is having symptoms of an ailment. Maybe the person is having drowsiness, or the person is having headache, or the person is having stomach ache. Those are symptoms that you have to prepare for. Carry out diagnostics. And when you do diagnostics, the parameters or the result of the parameters will point to a particular direction of what may be a root cause of the ailment. Take our time to look at countries that are very weak and sick countries. You see three core parameters that are very high. It's like when you're measuring somebody's temperature and you say, it's about 40 degrees centigrade. That person is actually suffering, having feverish condition or whatever. Whenever you see an economy that have high inflation rates, whenever you see an economy that have high lending rates, whenever you see an economy that have high deposit rates, whenever you see an economy that has price instability and forex instability, that country economy is weak and very sickly and needs some intervention, injections to be able to come out of their state of sickness. And I'll give you an example. Take our time to look at the top 10 economies in the whole world, the top 10 most productive economies in the whole world. From the US to Singapore to Vietnam to Switzerland to the UK to Canada. Take our time to look at countries that have very productive economy. One in Japan, one thing that is very common, they have very low inflation rate. 0.5, 1%, 2%, 3%, maximum 3-4%. In terms of lending rate, you see that their NPR is actually very low, 2%, 0.5. But in Japan, it even got to a level where their NPR rate was even in the negative. That simply means if you put deposit in the bank, you lose money. What it simply means that they are so productive that you don't even need to put money in the bank. Every money keeps on working. Remember that there are 4 factors of production: human capital, land, machineries and equipment, and then capital, which is money. These 4 factors of production come together to create productivity. Of these 4 factors of production, land is the one that is naturally gifted, and then of course human beings, and then machineries are creativity or creation of human mind, and then capital and money, which is the medium of exchange between surplus units and economic deficit units. So look around you, and I'll give you an example. Today in Nigeria, inflation rate is almost at about 34% before they doctored it and told us that the CPI is now 24%. But we know what they did. Forget the rebasing. For rebasing to be altruistic, for rebasing to be real, there are factors that will lead to rebasing. And even if you look at those factors that led to rebasing, it should actually be on the upside rather than trending down. Look at the NPR rate, 57.5%. The NPR rate, the monetary policy rate, is the rate. It is called a discounted rate. It's the risk-free rate of Nigeria. It is that risk upon which every other lending rate is tied onto. Look at deposit rates. You go to banks, banks are hustling for deposits. Fix 1 year money with us with 2%. These are symptomatic manifestations of a very sick country. Look at the foreign exchange rate. Today it is 1,650. Maybe it is 1,500. Maybe it is 1,000. That is a symptomatic manifestation of a very sick and weak economy. So, and if you look at history, There was a time in Nigeria that this country was very productive, between 1960 to 1970. And if you look at the economic parameters then, inflation rate in Nigeria was averaging 4% per annum over the 1960 to 1970. In fact, the only time inflation rate spiked up to 10% was in 1969, based on the historical trend. If you look at the forex stability then, the pounds then, the Nigerian pounds was so stable, more stable than the US dollar. In fact, between 1960 to 1966, the Nigerian pounds was 65 pence to $1. In fact, in 1970, it even gained 57 pence to $1. It was that stable. Do you know why it was stable? The economic parameter then, our economy then was very productive. It was productive based. It was not a rent-seeking criminal one. The politicians then were looting to stash away our wealth outside of Nigeria. In fact, one of the wealthiest men in Africa, Sir Lewis of Liverpool, was a parliamentarian. He was so wealthy that he was chairman of the top 15 topmost corporation in Nigeria. He was so wealthy that he went to parliament and he was talking one day, somebody interrupted him, he dropped his file and walked away. We had premier of the old Eastern Nigeria, Dr. Michael Lokman, a medical doctor. He was premier at 39. He was so sound that the first thing he did was to procure one of the biggest economic consultants in the whole world from the US, who helped him draw up a master plan of how to build massive hundreds of kilometers agro-industrial belt. And by the time he left after the coup of 1966, had already done 240 kilometers. He had the fastest growing economy in the whole of the Commonwealth, 9.5% growth per annum. He had a very secure economy. He had a very strong regional police that was most efficient in Africa based on history. And he did not loot, he did not steal. The only house he left for his children, no matter, took the intervention of the state government for it to even be upgraded to be repaired to habitable state. Till today, till tomorrow, Michael Okpara's name rings in immortality as a saint. What of this? Look at what he did between 1973. What this Simon Dokwe did in 4 years is more than what all the governors in the South joined together have done over the last 26 years. And when I see them carry out propaganda with their proposal, I feel like okay. Look at lending rate. The average lending rate in Nigeria was 5.8%. It only got to about 9.3% in 1985. Go back and fact check me. So, can we build up a productive economy? 60s, we had a productive-based economy. The physical and cultural regimes were such that each of the regions looked inward. Use some of the latent, harness some of the latent resources in their regions to produce and process. In the north, we had a massive granite pyramid. We had granite oil flowing from that place. We had the cotton that produced raw material for the massive textile companies there. In the southwest and the old west of Nigeria, we had cocoa. The tallest building in Ibadan today was built about 55 years ago with cocoa proceeds. In the east, we had the brilliant Buwak Michael Okpara. We had from palm oil to coal to limestones and clinkers. In fact, the guy was everywhere. And he was such a very organized man that he had one simple goal to put affordable food on the table of every individual of the whole Eastern Nigeria. Then you can wake up in the morning, dust your passport, enter Nigerian Airways or any nearest airways and go to America, go to Canada, go to UK. Nobody will ask you for any visa. Nigerian passport was so powerful, more powerful than the even US passport. It was so powerful that Nigeria will be ranked and projected to be among the first top 5 powers by the advent of this millennium, which is the year 2000. So, and such was the trajectory that in 1960, go and fact check me, our GDP in 1960 was $4.2 billion. That of South Korea was $3.9 billion. In 1970, we even gapped them. We were $12.3 billion. Their GDP was $9.5 billion. In 1980, they caught up with us. Today, 52 million people, their GDP is $1.7 trillion. Our GDP is less than $200 billion. If we had continued on that same trajectory of growth that we had between 1960 to 1970 during our most productive years, we would have had a $2.7 trillion economy today. our hopes lost? No. Can we go back to those things that work for us? Awesome. And what are those things that work for us? We need to first of all achieve the constitutional and physical regime of Nigeria, the constitutional framework, the governance framework, the electoral laws, to allow people with good heads like Nneka to come into power. And that is the truth. As long as we have all manner of, we have a physical arrangement, a convoluted criminal physical arrangement that allow only bandits access to power, this country will not move forward. Then people like I say it, people like Salis or Lego, reputed to be the wealthiest man in Africa, he also contested to be president. He wanted to go to parliament to make laws, bringing his wealth of experience, to provide policies and programs that will help us run efficient systems of government. The states and regions control 50% of their resources. Everyone grew at their own pace. Nobody was disturbing each other. There was ethnicity in Nigeria then. There was religious awareness. The people grew at their various places. So we need to go back to what worked for us. We need to rejig the constitutional framework of Nigeria. In fact, tie the text of office of public servants to that of the civil service and make it part-time. If Nigeria was to be like the US, look at the US economy. Their budget for 2024 was about $6.9 trillion. What was only appropriated to National Assembly members was $3 billion, 0.0043% of their GDP. If we were to follow the same trend, the current National Assembly members would have allocated $354 billion to themselves. What they would have allocated to themselves was $15 billion, 15 billion naira, and nothing more than that. They are building library with almost about 12 billion naira. How many of them even know how to read? How many of them have ever entered any library to get read before? They can't even read with their phones. So that is the kind of wastages, the kind of nonsense that we condone here. We can build an economy that grows at average of 15-20% GDP per annum. The potentials are there. We have a population of about 211 million Nigerians out of a projected population of 220 million that are below 64 years. We have a youthful population of less than 20 people that are less than 30 years that are in the excess of about 75-80%. So everything we need is to reject the system, make education a priority, develop the HDIs. First of all, massive electoral reform. An electoral reform that enhances and engenders transparency where the vote counts. A massive education reform program that will enable Nigerians to be educated. The essence of democracy, the whole foundation, the whole idea of a democratic governance where people vote is based on the fact that people will be so knowledgeable enough to make the right choices. But where you have a society that is over 65% illiterates, and even many who carry certificates, who are even certificated illiterates, who do not even have the soundness of mind, the intellectual capacity to make informed judgment, who are practically callosipolar idiots and stupid people, how do you such democracy thrive? So one of the combinations that we must amend our constitution in such a way that every revenue, every borrowing that is going to come into Nigeria to the state must be tied to education. When we tie to education, we will not increase minimum wage for teachers to about 500,000 naira a month. When we do it, the smartest and the most brilliant of us will go into the classroom. There used to be a time in Nigeria when once you graduate, I graduated the best faculty, the best in my class, the best in my school, the best in my faculty. And of course, I went back to school. Of course, I couldn't stay more than 16 months now because the salary was paltry with 8,000 naira a month to take care of myself and my siblings. I had to walk away. If we had an efficient, go to the US. In California, teachers are paid almost $100,000, $108,000 per annum. You know what $8,000 is over 170 million, 160 million naira per annum. If you're paying teachers 160 million naira per annum, if only one of us will enter the classroom, but I will become a primary school teacher. And that is the truth. So as long as we refuse to pay rights in the education sector, as long as we refuse to go and check the top 10 most industrialized countries, the top 10 most peaceful countries, the top 10 least terrorized countries in the world are countries that have literacy level of 97-98% and above. The highly indebted poor countries, the most terrorized countries in the world, from Yemen to Nigeria to Afghanistan, are countries that have literacy level that is at the poorest stage. Education has a way of liberating mind. I mean quality education, not education through a mockery and demand no mind. Education that builds up the character and the learning of the persons are violent. I just feel like we can build Nigeria. We can build an economy that is very productive. We can build an economy that generates forex of nothing less than $500 billion annually. No more you revenue. And for us to do it, we must overhaul the foundation. And if you look at Egypt prosper so much, because for 80 years, the wisest of men, Joseph was prime minister, from the age of 30. Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon prosper so much because they had Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego capture slaves who showed themselves 10 times more intelligent, more excellent, incorruptible than those from the citadel. But here in Nigeria, the dregs, the most criminal-minded, the most incompetent, the dumbest of us are the ones making laws and ruining our lives. And most of us, 95% of the elites are so cowardly, so criminal-minded. Nobody wants to complain. Everybody's waiting along the line to be invited to come to the meeting table. I would rather stand as a great man in the court of God than to sit at the head of the table of the wicked, low-wage, peace and desire that we have here in Nigeria, political parties. Thank you for giving the advice.